Starting my story, I recall the day I first met Samantha. A hot summer, a neon sign over a small cafe somewhere in Washington state. I had just finished my college classes then, and was working part-time at a car rental service, trying to save up money for further studies. At that moment, I couldn't have imagined that just a few seemingly ordinary meetings with this girl would completely turn my life upside down. My friend Rachel, who insisted that I come to the cafe, claimed Samantha had a certain charm and that I would most likely be captivated by her smile. It turned out she was right. When we sat down at a table and Samantha approached to take our order, I noticed the confidence in her eyes and the openness in her voice. A simple, brief greeting and the question of what I wanted to drink suddenly took on huge importance for me. I felt myself beginning to blush, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the shine of her blonde hair and how she bit her lip, trying to concentrate while writing down our order. I tried to be friendly and calm, but inside, everything was in turmoil. Rachel kept teasing me, supposedly hinting that I was already burning up just from looking at Samantha. We laughed, and at that moment, everything seemed like a light flirtation from an old-school romantic comedy. After dinner, I plucked up the courage and asked Samantha for her number. She smiled, wrote down several digits on a napkin, pressed it to her lips as if leaving her autograph on it, and discreetly slipped it into my shirt pocket. It felt both daring and enchanting at the same time. Even then, I sensed she was a lively person with a slight penchant for adventure. When Rachel and I got home, I repeated those digits to myself late into the evening before finally deciding to text Samantha for the first time. From her responses, it was clear she wasn't just being nice to me for a tip at the cafe. She genuinely laughed at my clumsy jokes and was delighted to plan our next meeting. Our first real date took place in a local park. It was a sunny day, but with a cool breeze, so I brought a sweatshirt and a thermos of hot chocolate. During that period, I often felt unsure of myself, as I'd never had a serious relationship before meeting Samantha. However, her smile and laid-back manner seemed to tell me, "It's all good, just be yourself." We talked about everything: childhood, parents, funny stories from school. At some point, I noticed how she gently touched my hand with her fingertips, and something clicked inside me in a good way. It felt as if I'd met a kindred spirit with whom I could be sincere, unafraid of judgment. She mentioned she wanted to move to a bigger city to build a career in design, and that working at the cafe was just a temporary stage to pay her bills. I listened to her and increasingly felt ready to follow her anywhere. So we started seeing each other more often. I invited her on short walks along the waterfront, got tickets for concerts by small local bands. We texted almost daily, and every voice message she sent made me smile so much that my neighbors were probably wondering why I was wandering around the house, chuckling softly. Over time, I introduced Samantha to my close friend Tyler. He was quite skeptical about fast infatuations, but after seeing how well we got along, he admitted he hadn't seen me so happy in a long time. Our bond grew, as did my confidence. I decided it was time for the next step. I suggested that Samantha move in with me. It was a bold decision because I had to look for a new apartment closer to her workplace. I found a cozy place in a Seattle suburb, saved up a bit more money, and suggested we move in. She laughed with joy, thanked me, said she liked my decisiveness. And so we began sharing day-to-day life, learning to adjust to each other. I cooked breakfast, she did the laundry, we went grocery shopping together, and in the evenings we would lie around in front of the TV, cuddling and discussing shows. I felt truly happy. Deep down, I thought this was exactly what adult life should look like, having someone by your side with whom you can chat until sunrise, laugh when everything goes wrong, and be glad you have the strength to overcome small challenges. Things at work were going fairly well for me too, and overall, I kept thinking about what our shared future might be like. Tyler teased me, saying I'd grown up so fast that I wouldn't have time to blink before I was ready to kneel down and propose. But life is ever-changing. It started to seem like I was noticing some oddities in Samantha's behavior. Out of nowhere, she rarely wanted to have dinner together, and she stayed late after work, citing urgent matters or meetups with girlfriends. It worried me, but I tried not to accuse her without proof. She said she really was having tough days, and I tried to support her. Still, on those evenings, when she said she was staying late at the cafe, I felt a troubling lump in my throat that wouldn't subside. Sometimes I even thought we might have moved in together too soon, that she might need more personal space. I tried talking to her about it, suggested I give her more freedom, but she seemed to avoid the direct conversation, preferring instead to hurry into her room, shut the door, and act as though nothing was wrong. Maybe I should have pressed her to find out what was really happening, but overflowing with faith in our carefree love, I simply waited for everything to sort itself out. Everything changed after one unexpected message. One evening, Samantha had already gone to meet someone when I got a text from my old friend Jason. He'd studied with me in college, then moved to another state, so we rarely kept in touch. But he was the one who told me something that became a wake-up call. "Listen, I'm not sure, but I think I saw your girlfriend last night in a club with some guy. They were acting, how to put it, pretty romantic." I could barely read the words. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would break through my ribcage. I asked Jason for details. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, maybe it was someone who looked a lot like her. Anything can happen. He answered that he wouldn't have said anything if he weren't certain it was her. I thanked him for his honesty, but tried not to jump to conclusions. That evening, I stayed home, looking at the city's bright lights through the window, trying to calm down. When Samantha returned, I timidly asked how her get-together had gone. She automatically said, "It was fine. We just had coffee and talked. You know my girlfriends." I tried to pick up on any deceit in her voice, but she spoke so naturally that I couldn't help doubting Jason's words. Or maybe I was just afraid to admit the truth. A couple of days later, I felt the situation heating up. No matter how much I tried to distract myself, the idea that Samantha might not be sincere was eating me up inside. On the rare occasions we were together in the evenings, she was either incredibly affectionate, as though trying to make up for some guilt, or the opposite, distant, as if she wanted to avoid intimacy with me. One day, I went into the bathroom to look for her hairbrush and saw a notification flashing on her phone from someone named Mark. I'd never heard her mention a Mark. Of course, it could just be a colleague or an old friend, but something told me there were too many coincidences. Still, I tried to banish negative thoughts. I was afraid of being that annoying guy who makes a big deal out of nothing. I wanted to believe we were still all right and didn't want to destroy our life with silly suspicions. But the pattern made up of those small details was undermining my faith. Samantha more often disappeared in the evenings, invented countless reasons why she couldn't spend weekends with me, got nervous when she got calls, and went into another room to answer. Sometimes she seemed very pensive, as though wrestling with some internal dilemma, but she never let me into her thoughts. I began to feel a chill. Our home, once filled with laughter, now felt empty. Even if we sat next to each other, I sensed a wall between us that I couldn't overcome. The only solace was brief chats with Tyler and Rachel. I didn't tell them everything, but I shared my feelings and worries. Each time, they said I needed to talk openly with Samantha, find out the truth, even if it hurt. But I kept hoping it would all somehow resolve itself. Probably, I just wasn't ready to face reality and admit that love doesn't always guarantee loyalty or sincerity. I was living in a fantasy world where people in love don't cheat, and I couldn't imagine that something like that would actually happen to me. Yet, the premonition persisted, and, as it turned out, it wasn't without reason. A warm June evening. It was already getting dark outside, and I was sitting in the living room going over my thoughts. At last, I'd made up my mind to settle everything once and for all. That day, Samantha said she'd be working late, but I'd already found out from a few people who frequented the same cafe that her shift ended at 6 in the evening, and there was no overtime scheduled. I felt a hidden anger over her lie begin to build inside me. On one hand, I didn't want to be harsh. On the other, I knew I had to do something. I decided to wait for her at home and have a straightforward talk with no hints or beating around the bush. Time dragged on. The clock was nearing 9 when the door finally opened, and Samantha walked in, trying to act like nothing had happened. She smiled, as though after a long day at work, she really just wanted to fall onto the couch. But the moment she noticed me watching her closely, Her smile froze. I asked how her day had been. She replied that there'd been lots of customers, lots of hassle. Doing my best to stay calm, I asked, "Really? But it seems your shift ended early." She tensed up, quickly trying to come up with an excuse. "Well, after work I met up with the girls, Rachel and the rest." But I knew Rachel had been at a family event out of town all day and had only come back that evening. I didn't want to cause a scene. I just asked her to tell me the truth, what she'd been doing and why she'd lied so often. Samantha started to get nervous, fiddling with her hair, visibly anxious. Suddenly, that name Mark came up in conversation. Apparently he was the reason for all these mysterious outings. She said there were business matters with him. Supposedly he was helping her with a new design project and she didn't want to burden me with her problems. I felt a lump in my throat. My heart seemed to stop. Her explanation sounded too vague and embarrassed. But I still tried to believe her. Even then, there was a shadow of guilt in her eyes, and she kept getting tangled up in her own story. The next day, as I was getting ready for work, it felt like everything would come to a head. During my lunch break, I went to the parking lot to sit in my car and check my email when a new message came in from Jason. He said he'd seen Samantha downtown with that same man, implying that her business matters didn't look like an office meeting at all. I was angry and didn't know what to do. That evening, I decided not to go home right away, but to drive to that same club Jason had mentioned. Sitting in my car across from the entrance, I recalled all the happy moments we'd had. My heart clenched at the thought that it might all have been an illusion. After about an hour, I saw her figure at the entrance. A tall guy in a black leather jacket stood beside her, and I immediately realized that was Mark. They were laughing, talking animatedly, and then he put his arm around her waist and leaned in close to her face. 1 second was all it took for me to understand. My worst fears were confirmed. I felt a sharp pain inside, like I'd been hit right in the heart. For a while, I just sat there, unable to move. All sorts of thoughts ran through my head, like maybe I should get out and start a scene. But I couldn't. Instead, I leaned my head against the steering wheel, a shamed tear sliding down my cheeks. I'd never felt so humiliated. I always considered myself strong-willed, but at that moment, I realized my trust and sincerity had backfired on me. Slowly, I started the car and drove away, breathing heavily. That night, I didn't answer any of Samantha's calls. I felt I couldn't talk to her without breaking down. The next morning, when she came home, I asked her directly where she'd been. She mumbled something incoherent about getting stuck in traffic and her phone dying. But I'd already seen everything with my own eyes. There was no longer any point hoping we could fix it with a simple conversation. Overcome with anger, I told her what I'd observed and said I knew she was seeing Mark, that I had seen them together. Fear filled her eyes, and she abruptly started saying it was all an accident, that it meant nothing. But all I heard was insincerity. A truly remorseful person talks differently, acknowledges their mistake. All I heard was a clumsy string of excuses. Samantha tried to hold back tears, but apparently she was more sorry for herself and the situation she'd created for both of us. A wave of rage and disappointment washed over me. I recalled all those nights when I sat at home alone, waiting and worrying while she was with someone else, hugging him. All my dreams of a shared future fell to pieces. I told her she had to pack her things. I couldn't look at her anymore without feeling that I'd been betrayed in the worst way. A phase of hollow despair set in. The moment Samantha left the apartment, her bag packed was accompanied not by shouts or broken dishes, but by a heavy silence. When the door slammed shut behind her, I tried to catch my breath but couldn't stop myself from crying. I sat on the couch where we used to watch movies together, realizing that all of it was now in the past, never to return. I was too crushed to do anything. For several days, I hardly ate and was tormented by insomnia. It felt like I was drowning in disbelief. How could this be? I was so sure our love was strong. We had plans. Everything was ours together. We didn't always agree, but we found compromises. I thought we were moving in the same direction. It turned out she'd been on her own path for a while and just hadn't had the courage to tell me. When my friends found out what had happened, they tried to support me, but what could they do? My pride was shattered, and her betrayal had turned all the bright memories into a source of pain. Every item in the house, her favorite mug, her pillowcase, reminded me of her. Questions swirled in my head. Why? What did I do wrong? Did I not pay her enough attention? Did I miss something? Tyler tried to get me to go for walks, to the gym, said I needed some fresh air to clear my head, but at first I couldn't make myself go outside and pretend everything was normal. Rachel brought over a bunch of prepared meals, knowing I probably wasn't cooking for myself. She didn't openly condemn Samantha, but I could see by her expression that she despised her. My life was in chaos. I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in the same apartment. I walked through the rooms, remembering how we'd chosen the wallpaper together, how she fussed around the kitchen, or sat at her laptop working on sketches. Tears came without warning, and I felt like I was reliving her departure. Since she left, we'd hardly been in touch. I blocked her number, stopped checking social media, knowing that any mention of her could rip open my wound again. The only thing I understood was that I was now facing a period I'd have to endure like a painful operation, step by step, giving myself time to recover. About a week after the breakup, I started to feel slight relief. Anger surfaced, not at her, but at the circumstances that had led to this outcome. That anger helped me get up from the couch and begin tidying the apartment. I gathered all of her things in a box, didn't burn or throw them away, but put them somewhere I wouldn't see them. In the process, I found a silly snapshot from a picnic. We looked so carefree and cheerful that I froze, gazing at the photo, feeling my throat tighten with sadness. But I managed to get past it. I realized there are times in life when we're happy, even if the final outcome is painful. No one guarantees that infatuation will end in eternal happiness. Some relationships are lessons, forcing us to become stronger and tougher. I didn't want to become cold or vengeful, but I knew things would never be the same again. I lost my naive belief that love alone protects you from betrayal. Only later did I learn that things didn't work out between Samantha and Mark. She tried to make excuses to mutual acquaintances, saying she'd been looking for new experiences, that she was confused about her feelings, etc. But it no longer mattered to me. The main thing was that I learned to set boundaries and care for my emotional stability, because I realized how dangerous it is to depend on someone else. One lesson was enough to teach me that if a partner starts pulling away, you'd better sit down and talk right away, so suspicions and lies can't grow. Otherwise, you risk losing not only the relationship, but also yourself. After a couple of months, I found the courage to move somewhere new, not just out of our shared apartment, but away from everything that reminded me of the past. Changing my surroundings made me feel like I could finally breathe a little more freely, rediscover a taste for life. Sometimes pain is a herald of something new. It took me a long time to realize that all our hurts, all our sleepless nights and tears were the price of growing up in a way. I started spending more time with people who genuinely supported me, not just took advantage of my kindness. When Tyler noticed I was slowly getting back on my feet, he suggested I take on a major project at work. Feeling a surge of energy, I agreed. It turned out that throwing myself into professional challenges allowed me to channel my pent-up emotions into something productive. During those days, I also reminded myself that no one has the right to take away my future, no matter what my past was like. Whenever thoughts of Samantha crept in to break me down with self-pity, I said to myself, this story doesn't control me anymore. Sure, there were moments when I suddenly remembered how she laughed, biting her lip, or how we watched the sunrise together. But they didn't hurt me as deeply as before. With time, we learned to separate the good from the bad, remembering only the lessons life taught us. I stopped thinking about how else I could have acted, stricter, or on the contrary, softer. That wouldn't have changed anything. Someone who decides to cheat will always find an excuse. It wasn't my fault that Samantha chose that path. I was honest with her, so my conscience was clear. All that was left was to believe my future relationships would be built on transparency and mutual respect. That became crucial for me. I wanted someone who wouldn't be afraid to discuss any problems, who wouldn't bottle them up or hide them behind lies. When I first went on a date after all this, I felt a strange tightness, like everything inside me was constricting and preventing me from speaking freely. My new acquaintance, Ashley, was the complete opposite of Samantha. Calm, attentive, kind-eyed. I didn't know if I would ever again feel that same genuine infatuation, but I realized my heart was capable of more than just pain. With each conversation with Ashley, I gained confidence that there are people who won't hide the truth. She wasn't the type to say, "Everything's fine," then vanish all night for unknown reasons. If she had plans with her friends, she told me so openly. It seemed so simple, but after everything with Samantha, it was like a breath of fresh air. Someone caring about my feelings and being honest in a relationship. Tyler and Rachel made passing jokes that my broken heart was healing faster than they'd expected, but that wasn't entirely accurate. Pain doesn't go away quickly. It fades gradually, giving us time to understand what we truly want from life. So looking back, I realized, yes, infidelity is a painful blow, but it shouldn't destroy our ability to love and trust. It just means now I understand trust should be reinforced, not by blind faith, but by practical actions. I told every new girlfriend what I'd been through, without dramatic details so as not to scare her off, but I made it clear that honesty and respect were the main conditions for me. If in the future someone wanted to play with my feelings again, at least I'd spot the warning signs and wouldn't let pain blindside me. The world is full of different people, and not all of them will hurt you. Unfortunately, there are some like Samantha, who, for whatever reason, aren't brave enough to sort out their own feelings in advance. They try to live in two worlds at once, hoping no one will find out. Time passed and I felt I'd become more whole. Samantha's story no longer felt like an insurmountable tragedy. Rather, I saw it as a transformation, through disappointment, anger, shattered illusions, and ultimately, a new understanding of myself. I stopped blaming her or fate for what had happened. Maybe this was our shared lesson. For me, to learn to notice red flags and stand up for the truth, and for her, to realize that lies always surface and cause far more pain than admitting uncertainty up front. I no longer felt any urge to write to her, to call her back, or to prove anything. I didn't feel I needed an apology to move on. My life was now built around new goals. I had business trips, work projects, interesting new people ahead of me. I tried to remain true to the principles I'd discovered. If something's wrong in a relationship, it's better to talk about it than to close your eyes and hope the problem disappears on its own. Communication is the key to understanding, and without it, a couple has no future. That doesn't mean I became an impeccable expert on love. Like anyone else, I'm prone to doubts and anxiety when it comes to matters of the heart. But I noticed that after being betrayed, the pain teaches us to be more attentive to ourselves and our partners, reminding us how fragile trust can be. If someone feels they're lacking something, they should talk about it, rather than seeking solace elsewhere. And if they feel an irresistible pull toward someone else, it's better to admit it outright and end the relationship rather than hurting both yourself and your partner. Some might call that idealism, but I believe that without basic honesty, love is just a mirage. I also realize that any pain can become a foundation for something new if we use it as a source of growth, rather than a reason to withdraw into ourselves. When I decided to share this story with a small group of friends for the first time, someone said, "You know, a lot of people go through this. There's no need to go into details." But I disagree. Sometimes sharing the pain is very helpful. It takes the weight off and gives others a chance to see how important it is not to remain silent when you start suspecting deceit. It pushes you to have serious conversations about trust and betrayal. And maybe, because of that, someone else won't make the same mistake. Will find the strength to speak up in time and either save the relationship or save themselves. In the end, the conclusion to this entire story wasn't tragic nor particularly triumphant. It was simply the end of a relationship in which deceit built an unbridgeable gap between us. I'm not saying that one act of infidelity makes someone a monster while the other person is a martyr. But the facts remain. If someone chooses to cheat, it's neither a coincidence nor a minor slip-up. The consequences are too serious to ignore. In my case, distance proved to be the best remedy. It took me months to regain a sense of calm and confidence in the future. As for Samantha, I knew almost nothing of her fate. I heard rumors that she'd tried to get things back to how they were, but I stayed firm, knowing it was pointless. You can glue a broken cup back together, but the cracks will still show, and it becomes an entirely different object. The most valuable thing I learned is this. If a relationship has been hit by betrayal, the main thing is to stay true to yourself. Don't sacrifice your dignity or beg someone to stay when they're lying to your face. Yes, it will hurt. Your heart will rage with anger and resentment, but there's no sense in fearing a breakup. It's better to experience one true break than to live in lies and doubts indefinitely. Of course, it's easy to say and harder to do. Everyone deals with emotions differently. But over time, I fully understood what it means to get back to normal, to feel a sense of lightness and realize I don't have to prove my worth to anyone anymore. Now, when I look at the world again, I feel that this experience has made me deeper. I learned to view human actions in a different light. I know no one is immune to mistakes, but what matters is how we act afterward. Do we acknowledge our guilt, try to make amends, or do we just excuse ourselves and keep lying? Unfortunately, in our story, Samantha chose deception, and I chose distance. Still, I'm glad I haven't lost my faith in love. Somewhere in another city, another circle of friends, or maybe just the next street over, there's someone who's genuine. All I need to do is be open to meeting them. Because after all these storms, I realized the main value we can offer each other is honesty. Without it, everything else turns into an empty show that will sooner or later shatter someone's hopes. Perhaps, for someone, my story will serve as a reminder of how crucial open communication and mutual respect are. If I managed to take a lesson from all this pain, then maybe it was all worth it.